Welcome to Not Talk Live. I'm your host, William Hall, coming to you live from Kingsland, Texas, USA, with episode number 13 of Rabbi Tovia Singer's Let's Get Biblical Q&A. You can find us here every single week, Sunday, 11 a.m. Central, 12 p.m. New York time, and I don't know what time that is Indonesia time, but Rabbi does, and he'll tell you all about it. So thank you for joining us again, and without further ado, as soon as I click the right button, I'll bring to you our guest, Rabbi Tovia Singer, who is very well known for his efforts in his effectiveness in countering the efforts of missionaries who target Jews for conversion to Christianity, and he has the biggest fishhook of them all to reel them back in. So welcome to you, Rabbi Tovia Singer. Shalom, Rabbi. Shalom, shalom, shalom. It's good to see you. Good to have you. My goodness, it's been a while. A week.
A week. How were you able to survive the whole week without me?
You know what? It was tough, but I think we're figuring it out. With me, I'm looking for the right screenshot here. I need to get your hand and face up on this screen. Right. Let's see.
Without the face, the whole show is in the garbage can.
It's toast. It's absolutely toast.
Yeah, everything else is it. The face is the key thing. How do I look? This is the key question.
You look great. Okay.
That's all. So that's it. You don't have to have answers good answers for the questions. You just have to look decent, and that's all.
All right. Let's see. Now, a minute ago, I had this figured out. There's a screenshot issue that I figured out a way to hijack. Going around a different way. And now let me do this just for now, just so we can see a picture of you anyway till I find it. Where did it go? I thought it was here just a minute ago. Okay, David, do you have any clue? He doesn't. I just wanted him to be able to say hi. Say hi.
Hello.
Hey, David. How are you doing, sweetheart?
Good.
Good.
He's here to make sure that I stay in line.
Dope. All right, good. All right. Well, I just want to welcome everybody to the show. I'm not your host, but I'm your guest. And it's a big pleasure to have me on. So
it is a big pleasure to have you on, Rabbi.
Yes. All right.
Now let's see. Where in the world is this thing? My goodness, I had it earlier. Well, when I did my test episode earlier, which I've got to go in and delete, I have no idea what all went on through that 45 minutes, but I finally figured out how to get this part. See, I wonder if I can make this bigger. Well, you know what? What I'll do is I'll play around with it while we talk and see if I can figure it out. Because, we are. You want to say hi to the world out there listening?
Hello, world.
He said, "Daddy, aren't we recording? Aren't we recording, Daddy?" Yes, we are, son. And you are live. You are our first caller. Do you have a question for the Rabbi?
No.
He knows it all, Rabbi.
Oh, thank God I got away with that one. Thank God.
All right, very good. Well, I'll tell you what I'm going to do, right. Rabbi, I'm going to, so to everybody watching right now, try not to be distracted by me looking at paperwork. I'm fixing to present Rabbi Singer the first question. And while he's answering this, I'm going to try to figure out this little technical difficulty. But during the process, you'll be able to get fed what you need to have the answers that you so long for. Okay, Rabbi, I'm going to look on my little application here so I can pull up this question here. The very first one here. I'm just going to read it. This is a question about the Rambam. It says the Ram. Oh wait, there we go. Pete just messaged me. He must have just came out of his meds. Pete, love you, brother. It's working so far, I think. So you did a good job with the paperwork. Okay. It says the Rambam says that demons don't exist, but the Gemara mentions them a lot. Do we believe in Shedim? I don't know if I'm saying that right because you wrote it in English. How do we know that the words of Isaiah are true? That's number 2. Or any of the later prophets. I'm not really sure where this guy's coming from. The men of Moab, number 3, and Ammon were forbidden to marry Jewish girls. How come we have, well, you had a lot of questions here. How come we have no restrictions of marrying into the tribe of Amalek, even though they are more of an arch enemy? Number 4, the Gemara says, Avodah Zarah, or as David Solomon would say, Avodah Zarah. It says that Rav Meir says that a goy who learns Torah can reach a level of a Kohen Gadol in the Beit HaMikdash, but in Sanhedrin 59, a goy is not allowed to learn Torah and keep Shabbos. Here's a major contradiction. So that's kind of a rundown.
That's a lot of questions.
Why don't you pick one?
Let's stick with the Bible, and let's stick with questions that relate directly to Scripture. So,
perfect.
Go ahead. So the biblical questions. Let's sort of roll that backward.
Very good.
You talked about why we're allowed to marry Amalek or a Moabite. Was that your question?
Yeah, let me read the questions precisely. The men.
Just one question.
You got it. The men of Moab and Ammon.
Because I'm not as smart as I look. So
you do look pretty smart.
You know what? This is a very interesting show. You have to understand. I want to talk to the people out there. WIL'Liam, I convinced him that I'm so smart that he could ask me 5,000 questions. I'll not only know the answer, but I'll know the answer in order, in reverse. The truth is, I'm sitting here, I have no idea what this man is talking about. I hope somebody, but I'll tell you how I do the show. Let me explain to everybody. In truth, there's a rabbi in New York who gives me the answers in my headphones. See, this headphone, he tells me what to say, and I say it. I just know how to talk, and so I come to the answer there. No, but so let's go to the question about marrying out of the faith in the faith. What's that noise, that cling noise? Does that mean dinner's ready? What does that mean? I don't know, because
that is Pete.
When I hear that noise, it's a Pavlovian response, and I'm starting to drool and dream about a pastrami sandwich. So so I don't want to think about pastrami now, because my only pastrami I have is in my freezer. All right, so let's talk about the show. What are we talking about? Jews are not allowed to do who? What?
There you go. Jews are not allowed to. Okay, here we go. Question number 3. The men of Moab and Ammon are forbidden to marry Jewish girls. How come we have no restrictions of marrying into the tribe of Amalek, even though they are more of an archenemy?
Okay. All right. You know, it's interesting. I never received that question before. Okay, so let's first say this to begin. So let's start this way. We today, in our time, just to be clear, we don't know today who Amalek is. We do have in the Talmud descriptions of the features and character of Amalek, and I could share that, but that's not completely germane to the question. And we know today, in our time, who Ammonites are. Why we don't know who is because in 700 years, the that's very important. Is which means who is the king of Assyria. Program and his predecessor country, they wouldn't just conquer and subjugate an indigenous population, place themselves and move to another place. People feel an attachment and a patriotism to their country, and they would not rebel. Because of these actions that took place some 2,700 years ago, we largely, not completely, but we largely lost the identity of the Gentile nations and who they come from. Exceptions. Now, there's one that's our good friends and cousins have a covenant with God among us to this day. So they have a national identity because of a promise made in Genesis 16. The Arabs do and the Jewish people do. Now, when it comes to Amalek, Amalek is the arch enemy of the Jewish people, the arch enemy of God. Amalek's purpose is to destroy God, and therefore he goes to war against Israel, against the nation of Israel. Now, the commandment in the Bible is that we have to wipe out Amalek. Today, we don't know who they are. So therefore, right now, at this moment, we can't apply this commandment. But if the Torah says that you have to wipe out Amalek, meaning let's say someone told you, if you lived 150 years ago, and someone said, look, in this hospital in Austria, there's this family, and it's the Hitler family, and kill them, wipe them out because they're Amalek, and if you don't, they'll destroy the world. So that's what it would be akin to. So therefore, when you have a commandment in the Torah to wipe out this nation Amalek that's so evil, you don't have to say, and don't marry them either. Like, how do you marry someone you're supposed to wipe out? So, I mean therefore,
true.
Therefore, okay. So therefore, the Torah, it goes without saying that you're not allowed to go out on a date with someone from Amalek. That means if you have to wipe them out, you can't go to a movie and dinner with somebody from Amalek. That's pretty obvious. And not only can't you go on a third date and fourth date, you can't go on a first date with them. Not only can't you go out on a date with them, you can't go on a blind date with them. You can't even put a bag over her head. You have to wear. You can't go out dating with Amalek because you have to wipe them out. So there's your answer. The reason why Torah says you can't date, like let's say they have J-Date, which is like Jewish dating. If they had a Amalek date website, if you want to date someone from Amalek, well, you know, you wouldn't, not only can't date them, you have to wipe them out. That's why the Torah says don't date them or marry them, because you actually have to wipe them out. They're evil manifest. But again, today, no one has permission to go out and say, I think this person's Amalek. Naturally, there are, I won't go into it now, but there are features about Amalek. Amalek is a very organized nation. They're careful. They go after the weak. And they also, Amalek acts differently than other enemies of the Jewish people, because other enemies just go and kill the Jews. Amalek, the nature of Amalek is to operate under a condition of laws, which means that they set up certain laws, like Haman was, according to our tradition, Amalek. So first, why didn't he just go kill Jews?
Right.
No, first he makes a series of laws, and then based on those laws, he then goes in and wants to kill the Jews. It would be akin to, like, the Nazis first set up the Nuremberg laws and so on, and then the final solution. So that's why the Torah says don't marry someone from Amalek. It doesn't say that, because forget about that. That would be like the Torah saying, and no, it wouldn't be. That's the bad. I was just like, you can't marry a horse. Well,
right.
Of course you can't marry a horse. You can't even sleep with a horse. You can't, forget about it. That means that Moabites we have in Deuteronomy chapter 23, verse 4, verse 3. Actually, this is confusing, but it's verse 3 in the Christian Bible. It's verse 4 in a Jewish Bible, just to unconfuse everybody. Anyways, the Bible says that Ammonites and Moabites, specifically the males, now that's from the oral Torah, that a male cannot convert to Judaism. A female can. But again, we don't know who they are. So no one in our time is prevented from marrying the Jewish people based on their identity. We don't know who they are.
Okay, very good. Well, we did have a caller call in, and they hang up. So here's the deal. If you call in right in the middle of a question, you'll automatically be put on hold. So what I would like for you to do is that when you do call in, just assume that you're going to be on hold and just kind of hang tight until we're ready. And then I'll go ahead and click answer. I did find a button here a while back. I was trying to figure out how to call them back. And I think I've got one here. I'm going to try that real fast just to see if it works. I don't even know if it will or not.
While you're doing that, I just want to recommend, to any of our single listeners and viewers of the show, if you go out on a blind date and it turns out the guy has a swastika on his forehead, it's probably not a good idea. As a rabbi, I'm just saying, I know this is unsolicited advice, but if she has a big tattoo of Hitler on her head, then this is not going to make a good mother of your children. Let's move on. Go ahead. That's
funny. Okay. I don't think that actually works. So what I'm going to do is we're just going to, we'll skip that one. Caller, call back in 855-952-4253. That's Bible. So please do call in. And by the way, Pete, you were the man. While we were doing all this, he caught my message and he remoted in. I don't even know from where, probably from outer space, and came in and fixed it. And Tovia, we're able to see you up here now. This is great news. It's not just looking at a picture of you. So very good, very good. Thank you, Pete. Love you, brother. And we're still. Hey,
not bad, right?
You look fantastic.
Okay.
Yeah. Right. I don't know how you get your hair to like look so perfect every time.
And it's crazy.
You got this Elvis thing going.
And I don't even do anything. Imagine if I did something. I don't do anything. I know this kills people. I just literally, I go like this and it goes like that. That's it.
You know,
could you imagine it? Go ahead. Yes.
When my wife met me, I had like a number 2 buzz cut because it was so easy to take care of. You know, I mean, when you shower, you just basically run your hand over it and you're done. And when you comb it, well, you don't. So it's there. It's ready to go. But she told me that I needed to grow my hair back out. So,
yes.
So I did. I grew it right here. Very good. That's
right.
I know that's crazy. Okay. Let's see. Let me pull up the other question. I have another question on Facebook, and it was from Keith McKessick. He was not feeling good today, so he said his voice was kind of not good for chit chatting. So he typed up his message here. Wow, Keith, that's a long message, my brother. Okay, question is, I'm going to skip all the before and after. It says, and you call upon the name of your God, and I will call upon the name of the Lord. And the God who answers by fire, he is, Kings, right? And the people answered, it is well spoken, First Kings. The plan raises a few problems, though. The Torah forbids sacrificing to the Lord at high places in Deuteronomy. Oh, okay, I know where he's going now. Okay, also the Torah forbids a non-priest to make a sacrifice. I think that's probably enough information for you to roll on, but I'll keep reading if you would like.
Okay, let me just slow everything down.
Okay.
We are talking about Elijah the prophet on Mount Carmel.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Let's make this really easy. Okay. Let's make it really easy. So we are discussing a unique event for those of you who actually, for those of you not familiar with it, this show is not for you. I'm joking. It's First Kings chapter 18 and 19, and we were living in a very unusual time. So what I want people to do is to relax and listen for a moment, and I'd like to compare that to the book of Isaiah. This is important. In the book during the days of Elijah, if you notice, Elijah had to do, and Elisha, his predecessor, they engaged in an enormous amount of miracle work. They did things that defied nature. They were constantly performing miracles. If you'll notice that in the days of Isaiah, take Isaiah, he almost never performs a miracle. It's very rare that he himself performs miracles like we see in the days of Elijah. Okay? Now, I don't want to discuss Isaiah now because it's not germane to the question. I just wanted to juxtapose these two prophets, Isaiah and Elijah. Elijah lived during a time when there was enormous disbelief. People did not believe in the God of Israel, but they worshiped Baal. They worshiped the gods that were propagated by a very wicked woman. Her name was Jezebel, and her husband Achav. These were the leaders of the kingdom of Israel, and they had done enormous damage to the Jewish people to the point that Jews were worshiping flat-out idolatry and really did not believe in the God of Israel, had great doubts about the God of Israel. Now, I'm just using this for a juxtaposition to highlight and contrast the point. In the days of Isaiah, this was not the crisis. The major crisis in Isaiah was the Jews were misled and believed, very much like Jews for Jesus today, or like other groups, that all you had to do was run your sacrifices, bring all your blood offerings, and make sure that the altar was running great, and and you didn't need social justice, and you'd be taken care of. You'd be okay. You'd just be sort of an Orthodox Jew between you and God, and you didn't have to care about how you treat the stranger. So there wasn't, in the days of Isaiah, there wasn't nearly the amount of disbelief as there was in the days of Elijah. Elijah was able to interfere in history and to perform this miracle of having the animal, this the bullock, consumed by a heavenly fire on this unique place on Har HaCarmel, which is on a mountaintop, I guess near Haifa, and in order, not for the purpose of bringing sacrifices, but for the purpose of demonstrating to the people of Israel, to the nation of Israel, that the gods of Baal were false and had no power, and that the God of Israel was only the source of power. In fact, this was not a ordinary sacrifice, even though it was a sacrifice in a generic sense. If you look at how it was performed, for instance, he poured water all over it. This is not what was done in an ordinary sacrifice. So yes, an animal was slaughtered in a high place. Now, I want to explain what high place means.
Okay.
This would be like a bama. It didn't mean idolatry. People conflate the two. It just meant that it was in your own personal altar that was not in the temple. So in the time of Elijah, this sacrifice was an offering of an animal, but it was an emergency situation. The Elijah wanted to perform a miracle to demonstrate that the God of Israel was Lord, and he wanted to show that the priests of Baal, the 450 of them, would not be able to perform this. He poured water on the animal because once you pour water all around the whole deal, it makes it even more difficult for fire to consume it, because by drenching it, it kind of made it kind of fireproof. You think about it. If you take a towel or anything and you want to light it on fire, the last thing you'd want to do is spill water on it. That'll make it harder for it to burn. So Elijah was an emergency situation. He was a prophet, and he did this not as a temple offering that fell under the ordinary rules of sacrificing, but rather as an emergency event to demonstrate to the people of Israel that the God of Israel is the only one of power, and the gods of the priests of Baal, they had no power at all. So that's what he was doing there. It's called a sacrifice. You may see language in the same way, but what Elijah did, of course, did not in any way fall into the normative laws of bringing sacrifice. None of it did. It was a demonstration of the power of God. Okay.
Wow. That is definitely deep. Whenever, as you were talking about it, it made, just had me thinking about the idea there's the rules and then there are exceptions to the rule. I mean, like and I may be wrong on this too, and you can correct me on this, but just like he has told people not to create any images, for worship, but he told them specifically for the temple, you do create these things. So there's the rule and then there's the exception to the rule. I don't know. Is that kind of true at all, or is that really out there?
Well, it's not. No, it's not an exception to the rule. He was bringing a sacrifice, but a lowercase s. It was not a part of the Talmud, the Mincha, or any of the sacrifices that ordinary. Well, let me give you an example. It wasn't a sacrifice in the normative sense of the word, because normally you would use a fire from the altar. You would use a fire that's there. Elijah wasn't doing that. He was calling on a fire from heaven. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
So therefore, it's not an exception to the rule. This was in a completely different type of orientation and a very different type of ritual. Its purpose was not to bring a korban in that sense, in the sense of a temple sacrifice, but rather as a demonstration of the power of God. Okay?
Okay. Got it. Okay. So, well, that actually, that actually concludes that whole idea. The next question coming up is with Jesus being so-called the high priest of the New Testament, how does that, what is there any person who, like, until the new temple is built, the third temple is built, can anybody be a high priest until then? I mean, with that said, I mean, if Jesus was the high priest of his time, why was there still priestly functions taking place? I mean, it seems like it would be obvious that if he was the new high priest, then the current person posing as priest then would have been pushed out and hailed Jesus, that sort of thing. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, the people who are listening to this show and who have never been a Christian are going to go, what? So
right.
It's going to sound very, very strange to you. If you have been a Christian, get off my show. I'm joking. I'm kidding. I was joking. I'm kidding. Okay. So this idea comes largely from the book of Hebrews, chapter 7, chapter 8, 9, and so on. And the idea that we don't know who wrote the book of Hebrews. For a long time, the church said the consensus position was it was written by Paul. Today, I think the consensus among Christians, it's not written by Paul, but it is Pauline. The idea is that we need to get Jesus to be a mediator, and Jesus has to be the high priest, the one who brings about atonement for the people. And that, in fact, the entire priesthood and high priest was all a foreshadowing to Jesus. Now, okay. This is so convoluted, but no, so the answer to the question is no, we don't have a high priest today. We are told, if you go to Ezekiel, particularly go to chapter 41, all the way through the end of the book of Ezekiel. So there you see where the priests come from, and they come from the family of Tzadok. That's where the special priests come from. There are priests that come from other families, but the family that's of Tzadok, because that was the priestly family chosen by Solomon, and also they were faithful priests, they are the ones who are the priests who will be restored, not the Messiah. The Messiah cannot be a priest because a priest has to come from Aaron, the high priest, and the Messiah has to come from the tribe of Judah. Now, Hebrews is going to try to solve this issue of how could you be a priest and a king by conflating two ideas. I don't know how deep you want to get into this.
Sure.
But I'll do this for you really quick because everybody gets into trouble on this. Okay, everybody gets into trouble. So listen carefully. Okay, if you're not listening, you're in trouble. Listen carefully. Okay. The word Kohen in the Bible, a priest, normally we think right away, a priest, that's a descendant of Aaron. I happen to be a priest. I am, okay? And that's what we think of priest. But in fact, a Kohen just means lechahen, which means to hold office or be in a position of authority. There are many priests in the Bible that are not from Aaron, that have nothing to do with Aaron, including Melchizedek, who was the king of Shalem, who we find in the Bible, in the book of Genesis and spoken of in the book of Psalms. That has nothing to do with the priests of Aaron at all. In fact, the term priest in the Bible could be used for many different offices. It could even be a bad guy. In fact, a moment ago, earlier, we talked about the priests of Baal, Kohane Baal. They were priests too. They don't mean they were priests. Now, so what happens is, because there's a a conventional term priest, which means normally when we use the word priest without any modification, we think of the priest, descendants of Aaron. But that is the normative or the pedestrian understanding of the word priest. It's fine, but it's what happens is the author of Hebrews exploits that generic term and then says that Jesus was a priest too, a priest according to Melchizedek. The whole idea of priest becomes conflated. It's very impressive to people who are not familiar with the Bible. So we don't have a high priest today because the entire priesthood was suspended. Who says it was suspended? The Bible says it was suspended. If we go to the book of Hosea, Hosea tells us that describes history, the last segment of Jewish history, and says for many days in Hosea chapter 3, verse 4, 5, 6, 7, you'll see there the Bible, Hosea says, the children of Israel will abide for many days without a king, a priest, without sacrifice, without teraphim, with any of these things until the end of days when they will return to the Lord their God and David. Okay?
Right.
So therefore the Bible, I mean, my sweet holy brothers and sisters, all you have to do is look it up in scriptures. Okay? All you have to do is look it up in the Bible. Okay?
Right.
You just look it up in scripture, okay? And what happens is if people don't do this, then they'll get themselves into an enormous amount of trouble, okay?
Got it.
So you just look it up for yourself, okay? So the Bible tells us that the children of Israel will be without a high priest for a very long time. Now here's the issue. If the Jews are supposed to be without a high priest for a long time, okay, then how could Jesus be our high priest? You got what I'm saying? What the Bible has in view is that there wouldn't be a high priest for a very long time. If a religion comes along and says, no, there's always a high priest and there's always a king and there's always a sacrifice, then you know that this religion is teaching something that is completely false.
Right. Okay. Perfect. Okay, Rabbi, next question is regarding Psalm 110. The Christian view is that that David is talking, and that he's talking about the Lord of his Lord. This is Elsley Bick on Facebook. S.A. Elsley Bick, and she said, "I've read Rabbi Singer's explanation of this, but I have a follow-up question. How do we know that this is a psalm about David and not to or of David? What evidence is there to support this view?"
Could you? I didn't understand the question.
I think she wants to know how do we know that this Psalm 110 is written about David? I mean, how do we know it's not about someone else, or how do you say? It's basically to rule out the idea that it's a claim that it's about David. I mean, how do we prove? Is there proof that it is actually?
Okay. Good. So, okay, I think I understand the question now.
Okay.
So, what is the purpose of this song? What is the word psalm mean? Let's start there. It starts with mizmar, right? What does mizmar mean? What does zemar mean? It's a song. Who sang it? Where was it sang? Is it a song? It's like sing a song. Like what song is this? What are we talking about? That means we're introduced to this as a song that's sung. Well, who sang it? Where was it sung? What's going on here? So this is a song that was sung aloud in the temple, in the Beis Hamikdash. That was the book of Psalms, of course, is a source of many of our great prayers, but King David prepared these songs for the LEVITICUS to sing in the Beis Hamikdash. You will find that all over the book of Psalms. You'll find that these Psalms were for the LEVITICUS, for the Levites, to sing in the temple. So the Levites are singing in the temple. The Lord said to my Lord, to my master, because although in the in the Hebrew, they look very different. They look very different. One says the Lord is Yud K Vav K, the tetragrammaton, and the other one is La'adoni, to my master, which always means someone who is not divine. So that's how we know. It's what is the function of the psalm? The function of a psalm is the liturgy, the lyrics for the music to be sung in the temple. King David, was there a temple during the lifetime of King David? Was there a temple? The answer is no. Did King David want to build a temple? Yes, he did. Was he denied the opportunity to build a temple? Yes, he was. Why was he denied the opportunity to build a base of English? Because he had righteous blood on his hands. Therefore, the Bible tells us he wasn't permitted to build a temple. So, but the text says, David Mizmor, to David, a song, right? Right? And then it continues, and then it continues. Noam Hashem la'adoni, Noam Hashem la'adoni, that the Lord said to my master. So to David a song that the Lord said to my master, to the leader. I mean, the temple is actually called the Temple of David in the Bible. And then, sit at my right hand. That's how we know. So these psalms are songs. They're sung in the temple. The temple wasn't built during the time of David, so David's son, King Solomon, would be the builder of the temple. And that's when these psalms were implemented as music to be sung. Okay, that's the simplest answer I can give.
Okay, so
if I understood the question right.
Yeah, I think so. She followed up with a statement that says it says more of a question. It says to be a song sung in the temple by others about David. How do we know? That's kind of the resummarization of the question.
I didn't understand that part.
That's okay. I think you answered it quite well already. So that's pretty awesome. Okay, so we're going to move on. I'm trying to follow a couple different resources here because some people like sending messages in rather than calling in.
The point I do want to bring out is that the Christian Bibles, if you take King James Bible out and go to Psalm 110, you'll see there it says the Lord said to my Lord, and both of them are the same, capital L-O-R-D to capital L-O-R-D. So the Christians translators altered these texts and stripped the distinction from the Hebrew. No one who would read Psalm 110 in the Hebrew would ever draw the conclusion of the Lord said to my Lord. La'adoni means to Jacob referred to his brother Esau as my Lord, Adoni. So what's really has happened is and this has happened to Christians. I just lectured today in Jakarta for a audience of Christians, Muslims, Jews. We had a wonderful time today, and Muslims do emphasize, to try to read their holy book in the Arabic language, but Christians are this one religion that just never teaches their parishioners the language of the Bible. And they instead, in fact, for a very long time, Christians weren't even allowed to have a translation of their Bible into a vernacular that people spoke. Eventually, William Tyndale would do this, and he would be burnt at the stake for it. And eventually, it would become accessible in a vernacular that people understood. But just know the reason why people are confused by this, and Jews are not confused by this at all. Jews are going, what are these Christians thinking? Is because Jews, I'm talking about religious Jews, are reading their Bible in the Hebrew. I want to just make this point before we move on.
Okay.
I want to point out something that I think people miss. people miss. And I want to make a point. Okay, so I want you, the listener, to pay careful attention to what I'm about to say. If you take, let's set aside the Jewish-Christian debate. We'll put that aside for a moment. Let's think about other things that people debate. Let's say gun control, as an example. Should people allowed to own their own a gun? But ordinary citizens allowed to have a weapon? Yes. So in the United States, this is an issue that's debated. In more conservative red states like Texas, people are supported. In liberals, blue states like New York, people oppose it. I mean, that's very simple. Well, we could take capital punishment. Some people support it, some people oppose it. Now, let's all be honest with each other. Even if you're listening to the show and you have a brain, you probably have made a decision on which side of the argument you fall on. Okay, you probably realize, right? You made a decision that I support people's right to have a weapon, not just based on the Constitution, but based on the fact that if you're able to protect yourself and your family, you're in better shape than if somebody comes in and you have no way of defending yourself. You understand? But on the other hand, even if you hold that position and you're a lifelong member of the NRA, let's just forget for the moment the whole argument, don't take my guns away. The truth is that any thinking person who supports the NRA, who supports the right of ordinary law-abiding citizens to have a weapon, we understand why people might oppose it. Why? Because there are people who have in the home that can have mental illness, mistakes could happen, or you could have the person who owns the gun there's a million reasons. People who are suicidal could take their own lives, even the gun. I'm not saying this is correct or not correct, but I'm saying that we can understand, setting aside all the polemics, I get the reason for both sides of the argument, and I can argue them, and a reasonable person could hold either position. And I think we know that. You understand? There is a price to pay for ordinary citizens to have guns in their homes. Mm-hmm. That's a fair thing, okay? I don't care how conservative you are. Or should people allowed to have armor penetrating bullets that can pierce armor, the bulletproof vest? So there's some say yes, some say no. But let's be honest with each other. We know the reasons why people oppose it or why people support whatever. Okay, so this is the case when the death penalty, no matter where you are, we don't say that the other person's evil and saying to Satan. We might say it in a polemical way that the liberals are this or the conservatives are that. But when it comes to the Bible between Christians and religious Jews, each side says that the other one is completely in the power of Satan and is blinded, and got scales flying in the air, and there's veils and scales and Satan and demonic, and you're blind, and I'm going to pray for you, and you're so blind, I can't believe you're so blind. Why is there this when it comes to Christians speaking to Jews think Christians, I'm being honest, I was all my life a religious Jew. I was never a Christian for a second. I thought, now I understand the religion, but I really thought that Christians were out of their minds. Like, are you insane? Like, why would you believe in Jesus? So Christians think that Jews are either stubborn, blind, scales, veils, look, I'll pray for you, why can't you see it? And Jews are going, what are you, nuts? Why do you believe in Jesus? Because to a Jew, I don't care who you are, but let me just say this, that there was the guy in Waco, Texas, called the Branch Davidians. Right? There are still people who are Branch Davidians. I'm not kidding. Okay, there are still people who are Branch Davidians, even though the head of the group were killed in the area near Waco, Texas. So If I would say on British Davidian, you'd say, what are you, crazy? That's insane. To many of you, to Christians listening, that the idea, like being a Mormon sounds like, what are we, nuts? Why would you believe Joe Smith? And so on. This is how Jews think. Why? Because we are looking at the Hebrew scriptures. So therefore, this kind of notion that God is speaking to God and someone going, what are you? We're looking at the Hebrew, what Christians don't have. The reason why Christians, well, good people who are I'm not saying all Christians, bad people everywhere, but your average evangelical Christian is a nice conservative person who loves Israel, who in every way, in every rational, in every way, their cognitive, everything is going fine. And Christians reject Mormonism for many reasons. They reject Mormonism because the Book of Mormon has in it the King James from the Jacobean English, but they don't apply the same kind of critical thinking to their own New Testament. So what is happening here is that Christians are looking at English translations that have mistranslated the text, because every translation is man-made by definition. Every translation is a commentary. There isn't even a capital language in the Hebrew language. Anyways, let us continue. I just want to make that point.
Awesome. Well, point very well made. Rabbis, we're getting closer to our Pesach time. There's a Passover statement made by I don't want to say heckler because I really don't know the guy, but he's definitely not on the side. But he basically made the statement that says one goat on Yom Kippur, even though it's talking about Pesach, is killed. Whenever they had to slaughter the goat, or the pardon me, the slaughter of the lamb for Passover, wasn't that? How do we know that this has no contribution to the sin, to a sin situation? I mean, my comment that I keep telling people just in general is that Passover really had nothing to do with sin. So if we still try to attach Jesus to the Passover lamb that takes away the sins of the world, which again is a mixture of Yom Kippur and Pesach, as far as that goes, there really can't be a connection there, can there?
No, they're not related to each other, and I'll try to parse this out for the listener. The Passover sacrifice demonstrated our faith to God, that we trust in Hashem, and the first people that ever brought a Passover sacrifice, incidentally, did not use an altar either. They didn't have an altar in Egypt. Okay, that's a different topic. Mm-hmm. So there's another sort of exception to the rule. You have the Passover offering, no altar. But the key point is that the Passover sacrifice, as outlined in Exodus 12, had nothing to do with sin. In fact, on the contrary, you brought it because you were whole with God and you trust and have faith in God. Okay, now. Okay. What is the goat we find on the Yom Kippur sacrifice? What is that? What's the nature of it? And what I'd like people to do, because people have no idea in general, I can't say no one has an idea, but I find that people generally have little understanding of the Yom Kippur offering.
People, if anybody's watching this, please do get a piece of paper. Write this stuff down, and you need to stick this in your wallet or your purse, because this is one of the fundamental things about following Jesus is the fact that he was the sin sacrifice, and they use Passover for this. I'm writing this down myself, and I'm going to print this up, and I'm going to keep it with me. Rabbi, so far we've got three. I mean, you've only been speaking just for a minute or so, and you've already got three major issues. And I know you haven't even begun to catch the tip of the iceberg, but I really urge everyone out there, get something to write this down. You need to have this right here. So, Rabbi, sorry for the interruption. I just wanted to really encourage people to do that. So,
okay. So what we want to do is, here's what we don't want to do. Okay, this is what Jewish people really don't want to do. We don't want to come up with an idea and then look through the Bible, scour the Bible, trying to find any verse that would support what we already believe. That's what Jews consider radioactive hermeneutics. Okay, we don't do that. and I will not do that with you. But instead, what we, as Jews, what we believe is not to be God's master and say, this is what I like, this is what I want to believe. Let me see if I could find some sort of passage or text in the Talmud that could support what I already believe. This to us that's exactly how you get into heresy. Okay, that's how you get into trouble. All I'm asking each listener, and if you're a Christian, I'm talking to you, or if you have questions of faith, I'm asking that you take this approach, because it's obviously, if we want to serve Hashem and we want to follow the truth, we should throw that approach that is frequently taken and say, I surrender. I am your servant, God. And instead of becoming fixated on something that makes me feel good, I am going to follow you. I'm going to follow whatever you teach me. I'm not going to tell you how. Okay. So what we'll do is we're just going to stop pushing our church service into the Torah for a moment, just for a moment, and just let's look at the Torah. Let's honestly look at the Torah with a open mind and see what the text says and not impose anything on the text. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay, so what we're going to do, we're interested in Leviticus chapter 16. Leviticus 16 is devoted to giving us instructions in how to make an atonement on especially the day of Yom Kippur. Okay, it's devoted to Yom Kippur ritual and how to observe this day, the Shabbos, the Sabbath of Sabbath, the 10th day of the 7th month. Okay, that's what we're going to do here today. We're not going to go and say I'm going to impose my own thoughts in it. I'm going to look at the text now. The chapter, this chapter could be divided into 3 parts. We're going to divide it into 3 parts. It's divided in 3 parts. The chapter begins by telling the priests that they are to bring a korban chatos, a sin sacrifice, and the sin sacrifice is offered. There are many different kinds of sin in the Bible. There's sin that's called chatos, that's a careless but unintentional sin, but still reckless. You weren't being careful. Okay. Now this is the beginning of Leviticus 16. Why did priests have to bring a sin offering, which is brought for sins that are committed unintentionally? But remember, I said recklessly, because the Torah tells us that priests were responsible for guarding the sanctuary, and therefore, there's no question that during the year, priests could have been more careful, making sure that no one defiled entered into the temple, and therefore they had to bring the sacrifice to say to God, I'm sorry for not being as careful as I could have been. Now listen carefully. I'm going to skip the second deliberately for a second. The last part of Leviticus 16 is an atonement where a person makes by afflicting their soul. The Bible tells us that this is a method of atonement for all generations, forever and ever, that one must afflict your soul. And the Jews, therefore, we don't eat on Yom Kippur, we fast, we don't bathe on Yom Kippur, and so on. There are 5 things we do, but instead we repent. I want to focus on the middle controversial part, because that's the one that everyone asks about. Aaron is told, and his predecessors are told, that 2 goats ought to be selected through a lottery. One of them is sent into the wilderness. It's not sacrificed. It's sent into the wilderness from whence it came. But there's one that's actually offered as a sacrifice. And I want you to look at something really strange. This is really strange, okay?
Okay.
I'd like you to look up Leviticus. It's easy to remember because Leviticus 16:16, same chapter verse, 16:16. 16:16. What does 16:16 say? What do we have in view there?
Leviticus 16:16.
Yeah,
And
read
he,
it.
And he should
Slow.
okay.
Real slow, and think about what you're saying.
And he shall make an atonement for the holy place. That right there is already a problem.
Okay, so the Torah says in Leviticus 16:16 that you should make an atonement for the sanctuary. That's what it says. V'chiper al hakodesh. Now that means that you're supposed to make an atonement for the sanctuary, for the temple. Now I want to ask you a question before we start. What does that mean? Like, did the temple eat a pig? Did the temple go to a nudist beach? Did the temple, I don't know, this.
You got my son laughing over here.
What did the temple do wrong? Did the temple talk disrespectfully to its mother? I mean, what sin did the temple do?
Right.
I mean, stop. What do you mean you should make an atonement for the sanctuary? What does that mean? Now, the rest of the text says, "Mitumas b'nei Yisrael," from the sins of the Jewish people, and all kinds of sin. If you notice, it says, "Umi fish ahem." That means there's sins that are intentional or they're sins that are unintentional, that you make an atonement there for all types of their transgressions, but it's a sin for the sanctuary. I don't care what Bible you have, it says you make an atonement for the sanctuary. What does that mean? Now, if you don't know what that means, you're going to be all over the place. If you understand it, you're going to go, oh, I get it. Okay, so let me explain this. The sacrifice that was brought on Yom Kippur by the high priest with using this goat was not for any kind of sin. It was for one type of sin, a very specific type of sin, and that is sins against the sanctuary. Listen. What does that mean? It means that in order to go into the Beis Hamikdash, the temple, a person can't just walk in, can't go bowling and then just go. You have to be ritually pure. You can't. You had to go to the mikveh if you came into contact with a dead body. You had to be sprinkled with the ashes of the red heifer. The Torah was very clear that it is forbidden to enter the Beis Hamikdash to deviate from the laws of the temple when you are conducting life in either the tabernacle, the Mishkan, which was the portable temple, or the temple. And you'll see an allusion to it's not an allusion, actually, strangely, we're introduced to how important it is to not behave badly in the temple or to do the wrong thing, because the temple is God's home on this earth. So therefore, it does not operate based on natural laws, but on the laws of God. If you look at Leviticus 16, verse 1, how does Leviticus 16, same chapter, what's the first verse of this chapter? How does it start? Look at this. What does it say? Just go to the first verse. After the death,
right, of Moses.
No. After the death of Aaron's children.
I'm on the wrong screen.
Right?
Yep.
And they died. So therefore, Leviticus 16 starts off by telling us about Aaron's sons who brought a foreign fire into the temple, which means they behaved improperly,
yes, right.
And they died as a result. That's how it starts. Why does a chapter telling about Yom Kippur start about the death of Aaron's sons? How do you get the point here? That means, what is the Bible bringing into view by beginning a chapter that has to do with Yom Kippur by telling us that the Lord spoke to Moses after the death of the two sons of Aaron. Why do you have to say that after the death of the two sons of Aaron? And
Sure.
in case you're not sure, it says when they offered a foreign fire and they died, which means, listen up, my holy brothers and sisters, my delicious, delicious brethren. Listen, why does the Torah introduce the Yom Kippur events of the day by saying that after the death of the two sons of Aaron, who went and brought a profane fire in the temple, and they died. And notice it says it twice, because it was a real big tragedy. These two boys died, and I call them boys because they were very young men. They never had any children. So it was a real death. They died, and they didn't have even have any progeny. But the point is, the Torah is doing something. We're going, alarm, neon lights, blink, 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 blink. We're going to start off talking about dealing with Yom Kippur, of atoning for sins where people had transgressed the sanctity of the temple, whether it was the Mishkan or the temple. You got it? That's why the chapter of Yom Kippur starts this way, because the first part of the chapter is about sins against the sanctuary. Therefore, let's come back to the original question.
Okay.
Leviticus 16:16. Jesus, I mean, so ridiculous, because human sacrifice is forbidden. It's a grave sin. This is the worst thing. So it's completely inconceivable. But the sacrifice on Yom Kippur atoned only for one kind of sin. It could not atone for sins like violating Sabbath, or violating a married woman, or eating pork, or speaking wicked speech against your neighbor, or not giving charity, or wearing woolen linen, or kindling a fire on the Sabbath day, or eating insects, or cross-dressing. These sacrifices could not atone for all these kinds of sins that Christians are claiming was a foreshadow of Jesus, who died for every kind of sin. The sacrifice of the goat that's in Leviticus 16:16 only is what the text says. It's only for the sins against the sanctuary. So it doesn't work on any level. Of course, and I say this, if you're a Christian, it's blasphemy to worship man as God and to believe that an innocent person could die for the sins of the wicked. It is blasphemy, but Hashem, you probably were raised believing this. Your preacher told you this. These ideas filled the marrow of your bone. They filled your mind your whole life, and you've spent your whole life loving Jesus and talking to Jesus. These ideas may offend, what I'm saying may offend you. If they do, I'm sorry. When I say I'm sorry, I mean that I hope I don't want to hurt your feelings, but I know you don't want me to fake it. I know you want me to just give it to you straight, and then you are going to make an eternal decision in your life. Leviticus 16 begins specifically all the way through these verses till we go on much further. Leviticus 16, we are dealing there with specifically sins committed against the sanctuary, not sins of adultery, not sins of eating pork, not sins of not feeding the hungry, not any of those sins. Later on, we're going to have the atonement where you should afflict your soul. That's separate. That's for all generations if you look at the Bible. So that's what Leviticus 16 is about. It's about sins. Now, when we don't have a temple like today, do we have a temple today? No. If you go to Mount Moriah, if you go to Jerusalem today, there's no temple there. There is no Beis Hamikdash. You can't bring a foreign fire onto the altar. You can't do any of those things because it isn't there. So actually, this sacrificial step, these people say, well, what do you do today? Where is your Yom Kippur sacrifice today? You probably heard that 100 times. Well, there is no Yom Kippur sacrifice today because the very thing that the very problem it solved, or the very sin it atoned for, we cannot violate today. You can't go into the temple in a state of uncleanliness if there is no temple. You understand? So it only applies when a temple is standing. So it really is, again, I don't mean this to be offensive, but if you're not familiar with this chapter, it's preposterous to say that any person could be our Yom Kippur sacrifice. The Yom Kippur sacrifice, as it turns out, atoned for violating the sanctuary. Well, what does that have to do with Jesus? So none of it makes any sense. But the only way you're going to find this out, my brothers and sisters, is if you read it for yourself. And don't bring Jesus with you. I'm not saying don't believe in Jesus because Tovia says so. I'm not saying any of that. I'm just saying read the text with an open mind. Don't impose your preacher's sermon or a verse from the Christian Bible into the text. Read it and let it stand for itself, and then surrender to the God of Israel, to whatever it says. That's all. But it is, I know it's a strong term, it is preposterous to say that Jesus is a Yom Kippur sacrifice. Yom Kippur sacrifice to atone for sins against the sanctuary. What does that have to do with Jesus? Okay.
Right. And so,
do you understand my point?
Yeah. I mean, and another thing I was curious about, if he was going to be a sacrifice for the nation anyway, wouldn't it have not been a lamb, it would have a bull or something like that? How are the sacrifices lined up?
Look, you know what, you know, sure. You know, on Yom Kippur, it was a goat. In Leviticus chapter 4, when we have in view the sin offering, so there was a bull. So it depends on which sacrifice it is. But there are multiple sacrifices Yom Kippur. If you look at Leviticus 16, you'll see that it opens up with the sacrifices that the priest brought for their invariably their mistakes, errors. Incidentally, in the Messianic age, we're going to do this again. You don't have to do it now, my friends, but when you go to Ezekiel 43, just read it there. You'll see the same sacrifice, 43 and 44, of atoning for the sanctuary, cleansing the sanctuary. Same deal. Why would there be a sin sacrifice in the Messianic age for the sanctuary? It's the same exact language. It means that this is an atonement for doing dumb things, mistakes in the temple. And we are in the Messianic age, although rebellion will come to an end, people will start rebelling against the God of Israel. Everyone will know the truth, but still people are creatures of habit. And because normally when we go to the kitchen or we go bowling, it doesn't make a difference if you're in a state of purity or not in a state of purity. But in the temple, in the Beis Hamikdash, it really does make a difference.
Got it.
Just read it for yourself.
Very good. You mentioned earlier about afflicting the souls. One topic that got brought up a lot when I was in Messianic was we would talk about fasting on Yom Kippur. And a lot of questions that they kept asking me, well, how do you know that afflicting your soul is not eating and drinking? How do you know this for sure? And of course, so
yeah. Go ahead.
And no, you go ahead. That's why you're here. I want to hear your explanation. I mean, I heard it, I understand it, I agree with it. I just don't know how to really tell people about it. I don't know how to give them.
Sure you do, sweetheart. Of course you know. Okay, so so we see that remember we were talking about Leviticus 16. If you go to look at verse 31, if you would, for a moment, please. Just for a moment.
Okay, verse
You'll
31.
Notice Leviticus 16, same chapter.
Oh, I switched tabs. Hang on one second.
It's all right. That's all right.
Oh, there you go. 16:31. Okay, got it. It shall be a Sabbath of rest unto you, and you shall afflict your souls by a statute forever.
Okay. So here we are. Shabboson He lochem. This should the Yom Kippur. Now listen here. When it comes to this part, and this is the part of afflicting your soul, whatever that means, you should know the inisem es nafshesechem. That means you should afflict your soul. Chukas olam. This commandment, this part, is forever. Got it?
Mhm.
So unlike all the other stuff, this is always. Now you know why this is a chukas olam. Why is it a eternal decree? It always goes on. Why? Because this atonement of afflicting your soul goes on whether there's a temple or there is no temple. So this goes on. It's not dependent on that there's a temple standing or not standing. Got it? Okay.
Got it.
So now, okay, good. Now, one other part that you should know, and that is that the Torah tells us, okay, very important, in Leviticus chapter 23, that if you don't afflict your soul, you will be cut off from the nation. This is a very important thing, that if you don't afflict your soul, you'll find in the Bible, it tells us that if you don't, that you're cut off of that. Now, why do I say this? Because it obviously must mean something specific, or else how could you deserve the death penalty if you violate this. The problem is that it doesn't say anywhere in the Torah what you're supposed to do. The Shia Muslims smack themselves in the head or in the back with whips when they want to afflict their soul on a special. And actually, they do that on the holiday of Yom Kippur, of their 10th day of the 7th month. It's very interesting. They took it from the Jews. I'm not going to go into why, but literally it says that in the Islamic literature, they took it because the Jews do it, they did it, and the Shia do it because for them it was the martyrdom of their leader. I don't want to get into that.
Okay.
I don't want to get off track. Now, the key is the oral Torah tells us that when the Torah says that you should afflict your soul, but it doesn't give us any information of what are you supposed to do. You're supposed to punch yourself in the nose? What are you supposed to do? You should run as fast as you can into a concrete wall? And what does it mean? So the oral Torah tells us that there are 5 specific forbidden acts. Now, and what are those 5 specific forbidden acts? You're not allowed to eat, you're not allowed to drink, you're not allowed to anoint your body, you're not allowed to engage in marital relations, you're not allowed to wear leather on your feet, for shoes and comfort and so on. So this is the oral Torah. Now, just stop for, obviously fasting is most famous, but you have to stop for a moment because I want you to train you, the listener, how to think. There must have been objective information of what this means, because if there wasn't any objective standard for what this means, then how could anyone be punished for it? That means how could there be any how could this be applied? How do you say, oh, you didn't afflict your soul? So there had to be an objective standard. So as it turns out, how do we know the oral Torah is telling us the truth? Maybe the oral Torah is baloney, and the way that what the Jews say it is, Jews don't know what they're talking about, okay? So that's a possibility. So what we can do is we can actually look at the Bible and we can see the scripture tells us that in fact that is precisely what we do, because you find that in Isaiah chapter 58. In Isaiah 58, God tells Isaiah, raise your voice like a trumpet, call out to them, right? Why, that they should repent. And Isaiah is kind of finds this very striking of how severe God says, raise your voice like a trumpet. And Isaiah raises the question here, well, why? They seem to be doing everything correctly. They seem to be they're doing the rituals correctly. If you look at the text in Isaiah 58, verse 3, 4, 5, you'll see there, Isaiah says there, but they fast on their Sabbath of Sabbaths, which is Yom Kippur. If you notice that. So therefore, if someone wants to know, well, how do we know that the Jews are telling the truth about our oral Torah? As it turns out, the oral Torah of fasting on Yom Kippur is explicitly in the book of Isaiah. Where does Isaiah get this from in Isaiah 58? That on the Sabbath of Sabbaths, afflicting the soul means not eating on Yom Kippur. Where do they get it from? Get it from the oral Torah. So here is an example. It's actually a fantastic question because it is one of many explicit graphic places in the prophets where we see the oral Torah clearly. Because Isaiah says that fasting on Yom Kippur is what afflicting your soul means. So there we have it.
Got it.
Written.
That's perfect.
Great.
Very good. Very good. Okay. Rabbi, thank you for that one. We have a caller. Caller, can you hear us okay?
Yes, I can.
Very good. Thank you for being patient. I was wondering, should I leave him on hold or should I answer it and just see if he follows along with what's going on? You did a great job. Who am I speaking with?
Yes, hi. This is Mark again.
Hey, Mark. Wait, don't say anything else. Let me guess where you're from. I'm feeling a really good climate, lots of pretty pictures. But again, I'm in a barn, so who knows, right? Hey, Mark, how are you? Good to have you back.
Aloha, guys. Okay.
Hula hula hula. Sorry. It fell out. I didn't mean to do that.
Hey, Rabbi, real quick, can you tilt your camera down just a hair?
Sure.
I was going to send you a message on the other one, but I'm not that good at multitasking.
I have the power. You tell me here.
All right, He-Man. Hold on. Let go right there for a second.
1 second. It twisted a little bit.
Did it? Okay.
There's a little. Okay. How was that right there?
Yeah, that's okay. Now lean forward. No.
Can I just tilt it back so I don't have to lean forward?
Well, actually, I was going to see how you look leaning forward and leaning back. Because when you lean forward before, the way the camera was, it looked okay. But when you lean back, you were way down on the screen. So
how am I now?
I would bump it up just a touch.
Bump it up. So let's say I lean back. So
hey, that's perfect. Yeah. Just stay back and relax. That now you can.
Jew. I like to relax. I don't want to work in leaning. That's for Gentiles leaning forward, back. What am I doing here? What am I, Jack LaLanne? I like to relax. Me taking the risk is getting on a rocking chair. Is this comfortable? Is this okay right now?
That's great. That's great.
All right.
All right, Mark.
How do I look before we go? Do I look okay?
You look very relaxed.
All right, good.
You look great.
Go ahead.
Very good. Okay, Mark. Thanks again for calling in. Give Rabbi your question.
Go ahead.
Okay, great. Before I ask the question, I wanted to let you know that I posted pictures of Hawaii on the Facebook, so you can check it out whenever you want.
Awesome.
Great.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, and Rabbi Tovia Singer also sent you some artwork on Facebook, and I don't know if you received it or not.
I didn't look at it yet, but I will. You want me to do it now on air? I could do it now on air, but I'm sure it's. I'm gonna look for it on Facebook. The pictures of Hawaii.
Okay, great.
But it's a video or a? No, it's not. It's a regular picture.
Yeah, it's a picture that I had created for you out of appreciation for all that you've done for us.
Oh, you're so sweet. Well, where do I find it? 1 second. Now let's forget the show. Where's the picture? Where? Because I put up some pictures of Indonesia. Oh God. Where is? Now I'm curious. I don't want to miss the picture.
If I find it, I'll tag you in it, Rabbi Singer.
Yeah. Would you send me the link, Mark, on as a message so I can locate it and find it? Would that be all right?
Yeah, sure. And just look for my name is Mark Roskoff.
All right, good. All right, Mark. All right. Did you see my pictures of Indonesia that I put up?
Yes, I did. It's just fantastic.
All right, good. Because I'd rather talk about my pictures than your pictures. I'm joking. Go ahead, sweetheart. What's on your mind, Mark?
Okay, great. My question is regarding Isaiah 37, verse 7.
All right.
Okay. In many translations, it says that God put a desire into the king of Syria. Oh, excuse me. It says that God put a spirit into the king of Syria. But then Chabad.org's translation says that God put a desire into the king of Assyria. So why is there the difference between spirit and desire in the translations?
What chapter and verse was that, Mark?
Okay, it's Isaiah 37 verses 6 through 7.
Okay. Okay, so
Isaiah 37 verses 6 through 7. Okay, so the text says, okay. Verse 7, Hini noisim by Ruach, I will send, Hini noisim by Ruach, I will send a spirit, and right, so the word there is Ruach, which means spirit. What is your question specifically?
Okay, my question is Chabad.org's translation, instead of spirit, it says desire. So why would that be?
I'm still not seeing. You said 37:7, Isaiah?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, because mine says, "Behold, I will send a blast upon him, and he shall hear a rumor and return to his own land, and I will cause him to fall by the sword in his own land."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, some translations say spirit, and then the Chabad.org says a desire. So I just wanted to know if the Hebrew word takes on multiple meanings.
So the word there is Ruach, which means a spirit. That's what the word means.
Okay.
Verse 7. Okay. So is there a difference between the spirit and desire, or better yet, is there and something in common between them? In general.
So what we have here, so what we have in view here is I'll take that back. What we have in view is the greatest danger to the Jewish people in history since the Exodus, and ultimately would be the greatest miracle that God would perform for the Jewish people since the Exodus. This takes place in about 600 years after the Exodus, and what occurs is the Assyrian army surrounded Jerusalem, and Hezekiah was the king was a Davidic king, a very righteous man, and the enemies, the Assyrians, were threatening and screaming out to the Jews to destroy the Davidic king, the leader Hezekiah, that they wanted to destroy him, and it was a very, very it was a very great trauma for the Jewish people. I think that I will put a spirit in him would be the proper translation, but what we have is a prophecy, and the prophecy of Isaiah is that ultimately the Assyrians are threatening Jerusalem, but they will ultimately be destroyed. And they will go back, the leader will go back to their land, and in fact, as it turns out, Sanherib, who was the king of Assyria, was in fact killed. He died in the process. So therefore, it was an overnight miracle that 185,000 Assyrian soldiers were killed, and this took place on Passover. I don't know if it really makes a difference in how the text is read. I don't know if but the text, I guess I will put a ruach means a spirit. It would be the correct, but I can understand why they would put a desire.
And in the King James, it actually just says blast. I'll put upon him a blast, and he shall hear. For ruach, it says blast underneath it for some reason.
Yeah, I mean, what we have here is that although things look terrible, and they did, I can't even imagine being in the old city of Jerusalem. You're surrounded by an army of nearly 200,000 people. I don't know if you understand how big that is, but I'm pretty sure that when George W. Bush sent American troops to Iraq as part of the coalition forces to destroy Saddam Hussein, I'm pretty sure that he sent about 60,000 troops. This is 185,000, which means it's 3 times the size. And this is the ancient world where populations weren't that large. There weren't that many people in the world at the time. The historian Paul Johnson, who I have a very great deal of respect for, his perspective was that in the ancient world, an army of 185,000 men was the equivalent today of more than 4 million people in an army. I mean, that's just staggering. So what we see here is that a words of comfort that, in fact, that the miracle that the Assyrian troops will all die in a plague, and ultimately Sancherib, who was the king, who I mentioned earlier on in the show, that Sancherib would run back to the land from whence he came, where he would be put to death. And in fact, that's what happened. So this is the assurance that of the salvation of Jerusalem. And typically, I guess, the word ruach means spirit. It's a good translation. It's a fair translation. But if you look at the context is that I'm going to instill this in him. If you look at the of what is being said here, what's happening, he's saying here, Al tira, don't be afraid. Mifnei hadvarim asher shamata, of the words that you heard. What is the words you mean? If you look back, you had these Assyrians who spoke Hebrew who were screaming over the wall that terrible things are going to happen to you. We're going to defeat you. Don't be afraid of these words. Why? Because Hidini, I'm just skipping, Hidini, behold, Noisein Voi Ruach, V'shama Shmua, V'shav El Artzoi. So the text says, Hashem says, I'm going to put a special spirit in him that he's going to run back to his land. You follow? So therefore, although the word ruach certainly means spirit, of course it does, but the reason why the word desire is used there is because the context is saying, I'm going to put a desire into Sancherib, the king of Assyria, that he's going to flee away and flee back to his land where he will be killed. Okay? So
wow.
So either one is fine.
Got it. Mark, did that satisfy your question?
Yes, it did. Mahalo, guys. Thank you.
Hey, man. Thanks for calling in. We'll talk to you soon. Shalom, shalom. Okay. All right, Rabbi. Going back to where'd it go? I just lost it. Too many screens to toggle through here. Well, Phil. Okay. New Testament declares that we are now the new temple. Okay, and that's sort of the way to. Wow, there's so much Christian and Messianic doctrine that goes along with that, suggesting that there will not be a third temple. That we are the temple. We are the final temple. What do you say to people like that who really try to super spiritualize everything to avoid Scripture? no matter what kind of scripture you put out there, they always go back and try to spiritualize it, taking it away from the text and try to make it sound very mystical. And that's the answer. How do you just simply nip that in the bud?
Well, okay, so I want to organize these thoughts.
Okay.
To begin with, you know, there was a
Good Lord, that was loud.
there
Wow.
was a sportscaster, and his name. He was a sportscaster in the United States, and he would describe what happened in a certain event, and he would say these words, "Let's go to the videotape." I'll never forget that.
Yes.
I forgot his name. But I
Probably-
remember this when I was a kid.
Probably John Madden or somebody, some football commentator. No.
No, he was a sportscaster for Fox many years ago. He's he would be an old man today, that's for sure. He said, "Let's go to the videotape." You know, what that meant, what he meant by that was that you just let's go to what the text says. If you're an attorney, if you're a lawyer, you know, you study that it's called the rule of best evidence. This is a legal term in the United States and around the world, and it means that if you bring the original document in the original language to court as evidence, then nothing else matters. It's called the rule of best evidence. It means you can bring in expert witnesses and all kinds of. If you've got the original contract in the original language, that takes precedence over anything. So, the Bible is very clear in many places, but we're going back to Ezekiel 40 through 48, it's the last 9 chapters, where we have a very vivid description of the third and final temple that will stand during the Messianic age. See? So therefore, for someone to say there won't be a future temple, it fails under the scrutiny and light of Scripture. See, the Scripture tells us there will be a temple; it will stand forevermore. No one who is both uncircumcised of the flesh or the heart will be able to enter. Ezekiel 44 verse 9. Did you hear that? So if you if a male is not circumcised physically or spiritually, can't enter the temple. That would not be consistent with Galatians 5 and 6, right? Because Paul says that circumcision is done away with, and if you're circumcised, Christ will avail you nothing.
Right.
Now, the key idea that Christianity or Jesus was the temple is a theme that is repeated in the Gospels, and it's repeated. It's not only Pauline, but you'll find it in the Gospels as well. The idea was that Jesus is our new temple. He is our Yom Kippur sacrifice. He is the one who is now the fulfillment, the spiritual fulfillment of all the commandments relating to the temple. He is our temple. And this idea is related in a story way in the Gospels, which is very powerful. It's the storytelling of the Gospel is very powerful, where, we are told that Jesus said, if you tear down this temple, I will build it in 3 days. And no one got it, that he was saying that he is that temple. But this notion that a person is a temple and a person is an atonement, and a person's death could atone for a people and replace the animal sacrifices, that idea is hostile to the Jewish scriptures. The way we atone is the way the Bible says that we atone for sin. And how is that? We turn our hearts back to God. We did what the people of Nineveh did, as an example. We repent, and God will hear our prayers in heaven, 1 Kings chapter 8, verse 46 through 50. Even if we're not in Jerusalem, even if there is no temple, and God will forgive us for all our iniquity. These are not the words of a rabbi. These are the words of the Bible.
Mm-hmm. So,
Okay.
yeah, no, that's perfect. So, is there anything in Judaism that would suggest that there is a possible idea that that even amongst the Jewish people that they are going to be the temple, or that they should treat their body as if it was the temple, so to speak? Is there anything at all that even connects to Judaism based on what that says?
No, this is a replacement. It means what Christianity is seeking to do is replace God's way for man's way. It's building a golden calf. You know, let me do what using a golden calf. Even though I know many people are going, "Oh, wow, the golden calf, that was really a wicked sin." I think I get that the people would find a golden calf as something easier to relate to, or a statue of Hercules, something easier to relate to, with his beautiful hair, long hair. And when you see these statues of the Greco-Roman gods, they're all in great shape. They make us feel like going to the gym, because we're going, oh my gosh, these gods were like in great shape. But we're told not to create God in our image, rather God create us in His image, and we do not dare create a temple in our image, because that's what the Jews did, in essence. You notice that in the portions of the week that we're reading now from the Torah, at the end of the book of Exodus, you notice that there are concentric circles, and that is in the context. I'm taking you back from Exodus back to 26. There is the building of the tabernacle, there's the Sabbath, and dead center is the golden calf. And then we return back to great detail of the building of the tabernacle.
Okay.
Why is the golden calf in the middle of those concentric circles? Because God is saying, look, this is how I want you to do it. This is the tabernacle. This is what's to be found in the tabernacle. This is how you're to make a tabernacle. Don't deviate from it. The Jews were frightened. They were frightened out of their minds. How do I know they were frightened? Look at the end of Exodus 20. When God gave the 10 commandments, the Jews said to Moses, we're going to die. We can't take it. We're going to hear God's voice. We'll drop dead of the experience. You talk to us. And Moses rebuked them. If you go to the end of Exodus 20, Moses say, guys, relax. I'm paraphrasing, but look it up. He says, stop being so scared and needing this mediator kind of thing. You can do it. Don't be so scared. So we see that when people run and that precedes the building of the golden calf, because we see that just in a little bit. So what happens is that God cries out the 10 commandments. We're listed in Exodus 20. At the end of the same chapter, the Jews who are present go panic and feel like they're going to die. In fact, in one way, their soul just left them from the experience. And they misapprehend how they're interact with God. They're going, you know what, we need you, Moses. We can't deal with God directly. We need you. And if you notice, Moses' response to them is, stop it. You don't have to be afraid. Moses is
I really can't hear it.
Rebukes them for this. Now, why are we told this little anecdote of the people scared that Moses? It doesn't. What does it add? Why is it there? Why do we need to know this? It's not a commandment. It's actually a setup. It's explaining how you get involved with Jesus. Meaning, it's a setup to explain how you get involved in creating a mediator, because As Paul said, there's one God and one mediator between, and that's the man Jesus Christ. So the idea of what Jesus really is it is the golden calf. It is coming from Christians who are good people who believe in God, just as the Jews believed in God in the wilderness. They heard God's voice. They saw the parting of the sea. How did they get in so much trouble? Well, they got in so much trouble because they go, oh my gosh, I can't go to God directly. He's so big. He's so perfect. I'm so sinful. He can't even look at me. And I don't want to go to hell. I'm terrified and I'm a sinner. I'm going, all right, Jesus is my temple. So therefore, this is how I want you to see it, because the Bible says so. The Bible is saying, don't you dare do that. Don't you write your own Bible. Don't you create your own Messiah. Don't you dare try to create your own laws for a temple. You will follow these laws. And if you violate them, you are going to suffer the recompense of your iniquity. Christianity is man's effort to create its own temple in the way man thinks a temple should be like, in the way that man thinks a mediator should be like. Judaism's temple is a temple not the way, not based on our thoughts. There's nothing about temple that makes sense to us. What is holy and unholy? What does that even mean? Why do we need gold, silver bottoms and wooden planks and triple covers? What? If you look at the ordinances that govern building the tabernacle, you'll see that, why do you need cups and gold? Because it is based on not the laws of our world, the laws of thermodynamics that are the fine-tuning laws of physics that govern our world, but they're an otherworldly system. So Christianity is really the religion that you would come up with if you had to invent your own temple, your own God in your image. And that's where this notion comes from.
Got it. That makes good sense. And it really makes no sense whatsoever. all in the same time.
You understand? That's what's really happening.
Right.
The Jews built a golden calf. If you read the context, they built a golden calf because they didn't know what happened to Moses. They needed somebody to replace Moses. Sure. Well, that's what the church has done, is it has created the Jesus to replace the temple. Don't do that.
Right.
You've got to follow what the Bible says. Don't make the temple into something that you're going to follow. And that's what the church is.
Perfect.
Okay?
All right, Rabbi, we have a caller on the line right now. Caller, I guess you can hear us. How are you doing today?
Yeah. Hi, this is David. Hello, this is David from Brooklyn near Yeshiva. How are you?
Hello, David. I'm going to turn you up just a little bit. I think I've got you down too low. Hang on one second. Thanks for being patient with us there. I'm trying to get it to where when the callers call in that I answer them so that they can actually hear Rabbi talking. But sometimes if I start hearing feedback, I've got to put it on hold real fast so it doesn't distract the answers. So thanks for.
I'm glad I found you. I chase Rabbi Tovia wherever he is. Tell Rabbi Tovia I'm standing in front of his old yeshiva near Yeshiva. On Ocean Parkway.
That's my alma mater.
And I'd like to ask 3 questions. If Rabbi can answer whatever he likes, and I'll hang up and listen. All right?
Perfect.
Good.
Okay. The first question here in the chat rooms, people claim to be Noahides, yet they want to be Noahides still believing in Jesus. So I need a clarity exactly what it means to be a Noahide, what they should believe in and what they should not believe in.
David, did I hear you correctly saying that there's people who claim?
I understood that. So
I know I didn't. I was trying to offer for my own clarification. Did you say that there are people who are Noahides who still believe in Jesus?
Yes, they think
wow.
it's impermissible to believe in Jesus.
Oh boy. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
May I ask 2 more questions, and the rabbi will choose what he likes to answer.
Can I just ask him a follow-up question?
Absolutely.
Just for a moment, sweet David. Let me ask you: when you say they believe in Jesus, what do they believe in him? That he was a teacher, that he's a Messiah, that he's God? Like, what exactly do they believe about Jesus? Just so I know how to answer you properly, because I've never heard of that. I never heard of a person who says I'm a Noahide who believes in Jesus. I never heard that. Not that I just. So what have you encountered?
Well,
What are
that's a
you
great
referring to?
question. I didn't break it down because I can't accept that answer from them. But I could tell you this: you're not allowed to say they don't want to hear a Jew say denying the existence, the belief of anything about Jesus. They still consider him holy when I say that we don't accept him under any circumstances. So feel free, may I say, Rabbi, feel free to answer any way that you feel is good for the Noahide.
Okay.
Okay, can I go to the next two?
Yeah, if you, I'm writing these
Rabbi-
down too. So go ahead, David, and go ahead with your second question. Rabbi, I heard your first question, understands it very thoroughly. And I kind of agree with, I kind of like the direction Rabbi Singer's going with it too, because can I believe in him, but as what? As the Messiah or just as a teacher? So that I'm sure he'll cover all those
let's take
aspects.
the lightest one. Can they believe in Jesus as a teacher?
As a teacher even. Okay. That's fine. Okay,
Okay,
go ahead with your next question.
What do you want me to do? What do you want me to do?
What is your next question?
Okay. The other thing is Christians when they try to debate me, a Torah Jew, on the chat rooms, they think they became experts in Torah, even though I might be reading directly from the Chumash. They say I'm absolutely wrong. And the other third and last thing is how much credibility, how much validity do we give to Josephus?
Oh, cool. Okay. How credible is Josephus? Okay. Let me read. Okay. Back to your second question. Could you refine that just a little bit? I didn't quite understand it. So when Rabbi Singer explains, okay.
I will refine it. In the chat rooms that Rabbi Tovia a long time ago might remember, they've broken up into sections. They ask me to speak about Judaism, Torah, and then they say I'm wrong because and I say, but I'm reading directly from the 5 books of Moses from the Chumash, and they say I'm wrong, and they have the right translation. Now, how do they think they have the audacity to believe?
Ah, there we go. Now we got it. Good.
You got it?
Yep, got it.
Yes,
even though I
but,
might tell them,
okay. Is there an example you can give me in particular? Because that would be very vague. Because you're asking me, how do you respond when you're reading directly from the Chumash? But is there a text in particular, or you're just in general?
General text. I know you're trying to focus in, rightfully so, Rabbi. With respect to you know what goes on in the chat rooms. Each one buys a book on Amazon.com, and suddenly they're a scholar because they read it in English.
You know, I would like to, David, is it okay if I kind of add to what you were asking, Rabbi?
Sure, but
because
it's very difficult to hear. I'm calling on my cell phone.
That is okay.
I'm standing in the street next to Rabbi's old yeshiva, near yeshiva, just to make him smile, to remember his younger days and my younger days.
He's like, what are you talking about? I'm still young here. Look at me. Okay, so back on question number 2. I actually had a similar situation happen from time to time. I'm learning Hebrew. I'm pretty.
Rabbi, please?
Yeah, actually, Rabbi's with us right now. He can hear us. And so basically what I'm doing now is I'm going to kind of address this towards Rabbi Singer. So Rabbi, yes, go ahead.
And then I have to stop because I can't hear the Rabbi's answer. Please tell us every once in a while how I could get you streaming. I have to wait for the release of the MP3 to get this answer.
Do you have access to video? Can you watch anything through videos on your phone or?
Yeah, I watch the MP3s on YouTube all the time.
Okay, if you go to the website, if you go to tanaktalk.com, spell it correctly, incorrectly, the way we spell it, TENAKTALK.com, you'll see there's a link.
I got my mistake already. I spelled it T-A. Okay.
Okay. Well, you spelled it right. We spelled it wrong because we had limited name choosings on the website. So we had to kind of go with what was left over. So TENAKTALK.com. And then you'll see a YouTube link there that is the live link. And you can actually click on that and watch it as it's going. It's probably about a 30-second delay, but you'll be able to follow along.
I just want to ask a question. I don't want to go
like I said, I follow Rabbi Tovia wherever I can find him. And I just love it. Thank you very much, Rabbi. God bless you.
Hey, David, don't hang up. David, don't hang up yet.
David, sweetheart, which part of Josephus, Josephus has all the stuff. You have the Wars, which is written in 73, 74. You have Antiquities written in 94. What part of Josephus are you asking me is reliable? That's a lot of Josephus is just a lot. I mean, it's big.
Well,
Is there anything
Rabbi,
in
I'm going to
particular,
have to put it in
Josephus?
one package for you and let you know. As you know, Brooklyn Ocean Parkway, if I was to go to any of my rabbis, I said, what do we know? What do we accept of Josephus and the Dead Sea Scrolls? And they said, we don't go by that because we have the original. We don't need the copy. That's the answer I get from my rabbis. Now, you know what I'm talking about.
Okay. All right. Thank you, David. Bless you.
Thanks, David. We'll disconnect now. Appreciate you. Thanks for the call in.
Bye-bye.
All right, but be well. Okay, so let's go to the first question.
Rabbi, let me punch in that second question too, just on my end. Plus,
All
I
right,
want to make sure I understand what he was saying too, and I think I do. People say all the time that they really trust their King James. They trust their translation that they have, and so they're saying, why is it that the Hebrew scriptures is more trustworthy than what they have in their translations? Whether that, because they say, well, I searched it through the Strong's Concordance, so I know that translation is correct. But isn't the Strong's Concordance still written by Americans, who think they know Hebrew? I don't know. That's sort of my addition to that second question. So you can start wherever you like.
Well, all right. So let me start with the first question. The first question is, can a Noahide believe in Jesus? Is I think the first question.
Mm-hmm.
So the laws, the Noahide laws, include the commandment that it is forbidden to worship foreign gods, and forbidden to commit an act of blasphemy. It's forbidden to commit blasphemy against God. And therefore, if somebody worships Jesus or says that Jesus is the Son of God, or Jesus is, meaning the Son of God in the Christian sense, or says that, the claims ascribed to him in John. Now, I don't, and there are many Christian scholars, even conservative Christian scholars, that will tell you that John's depiction of Jesus is not historical. Meaning Jesus walking around going, I'm the bread of life, I'm the way, the truth, the life, all this kind of ego-emy talk. If Jesus really walked around talking that way, like, did Mark, Matthew, and Luke just forget to mention that part? Like, why isn't that found in the Synoptic Gospels, right? You've seen me, you've seen the Father. Those are, whatever it is, but he's saying, you can't even go to God except through me, right? That's the idea. John is not saying that Jesus is the God created the universe. In fact, the book of John is saying that just the opposite. Jesus is less, the Father is greater than Jesus, John 14:28. But if a person says, I believe that in Jesus, in any way, meaning that he's God, or I have to go through him to talk to my Abba, to my Father, so that's blasphemy. It's forbidden for any person to do that. And if a person who's not Jewish, the word Gentile is not a Jewish word, does that with full knowledge and understanding, is a very grave sin. So therefore, believing in Jesus in any way, even in the way that it is believed by non-Trinitarians, that he is somehow a conduit to God, that you need something to go between you and God, itself is blasphemy. It's sin, and sin shatters the soul, and a person should stay as far away from that as possible. As far as someone believing, I don't know, there was a guy who's just a teacher who had a little class going on in the Northern Galilee, whatever. I mean, that's not relevant. I mean, the question, but if a person believes in the tenets of Christianity about Jesus, then that person cannot be a Noahide. That person is in rebellion against God. Now, there are many Christians who just don't know any better. That's how they were taught. So God judges people based on their understanding. But this is a very, very grave sin to say that you need to speak to someone else so that a man was God. It's complete idolatry. It's complete object blasphemy. So no, a Noahide cannot believe in Jesus. I'm just going to presume that believing in Jesus doesn't mean that Jesus was teaching the olive bays and he had a little classroom going on in the northern Galilee in a one-horse town called Nazareth, because then that's just not relevant. So no, so they're not compatible with each other. I am the Lord your God. You shall have no other gods besides me upon my face. So putting anything between you and God is pornography. If you're married and you're going to a strip club and you're going to prostitutes and you have a girlfriend down the street and you have a boyfriend who comes over when your husband goes to work, that you have violated the covenant with your spouse. You have destroyed your marriage. And that's what Christianity is. It's introducing a mistress into the marital chamber. It's a grave sin against God, grave sin, and it injures the soul, it damages the neshama. Now, I will not say to you that it doesn't feel good. Idolatry clearly feels great, and adultery, I am sure, feels great, or else people wouldn't do it. But people do that. They risk their marriages and everything because it feels good, but it's a temporary good feeling. It's not permanent, and it ultimately is completely destructive. It destroys the marital covenant. In the same way that having anyone else to whom you pray, through whom you pray, if you are in bed with your husband, but you're thinking of another man at the time, and I speak to you, if you're married and your husband is with you in bed, and he may be holding your hand, but he's thinking about a woman down the street who he meets at work, how would you feel? I want to ask you that question. If your wife is thinking about another man, when she says I love you, she's thinking about, in her head, she won't tell you, but she's thinking about a boyfriend, how would you feel? It's a disgrace. It's a destruction to the marriage, and that's what Christianity is. I know these are strong words, but I know that those Christians who are listening to this show are doing it because you want me to be straight with you, and you don't want me to give you something that's politically correct. And I would like you to like me. Who doesn't want to be liked? But I frankly, it's more important to me that you know the truth than me winning some sort of popularity contest with the Assemblies of God and the Southern Baptists.
Right.
Okay. So that's the first thing.
Rabbi, before we go on to the next two questions, just want to let everybody know we're about to wrap up here. We're on 2 solid hours right now. I do want you to catch those last 2 questions for David, maybe on one foot if you'd like to. But one thing I'd like to just remind everybody that all of Rabbi Singer's books and CDs and everything are available at his website. You can find them on Amazon also, but go to his website, outreachjudaism.org. I tell everybody every week, one of my favorite things that are actually at the website are the podcasts that he's got broken down into modules by topic. You're going to love it. So go there, mark it as a favorite, go to his website, order his books, because you need to have them on hand all the time. You need to just keep them with you. I would buy more copies. I'd buy all your copies, Rabbi, and just give. If I had enough hands to use them. Believe it or not, my son, David, come here. Where are you at, buddy? Oh, never mind. He's apparently undressed over here. He's got his shoes off. His yarmulke is laying over there on the chair, and he's just reclining. But he's actually been kind of glancing at these books too, and it's really interesting because the homeschool that we have them on is not a curriculum that they're pleased with, because it does incorporate a lot of Christianity in it. But we have them fill it out the right way, Xing out certain things that don't belong and putting in the correct answers, which they get marked wrong, but at least they're answering the right questions, right, David? You there? You gonna say hi real fast? Hurry! Oh, you want to say it there? Oh, don't. Okay, go ahead.
Hello.
He doesn't want to get on screen. So, yeah, I've got David in the studio with me today. Oh, come over here real fast. Just real quick. Just say hi real fast. Wave, wave, wave. Say shalom to the rabbi. Don't block him. I can't. You look like Rabbi Singer now. Come over this way some. Okay. Rabbi's going to kick out of this when he goes back and watches it. Okay. All right. There you go, kiddo. All right, Rabbi, back on to the next two questions on one foot, if it's possible. Is the Hebrew trustworthy over the translations? Number three.
I don't.
Is Josephus credible? Carry on.
All right. So how could a translation be more accurate than an original? The King James Bible was revised over and over and over again. I think people are under the apprehension, they think, that when you open up an authorized version, you're actually looking at what was assembled in 1611 under King James, which is based on the Tyndale Bible. It's really based on previous English translations, like the Bishop's Bible, the Tyndale Bible. So it really borrowed a great deal from the past. So which is the word of God? It's so ridiculous. And the King James Bible is written in what's called Jacobean English, which we don't use today. It's outmoded because the English language is evolving all the time. So they had to update the King James. I don't mean the new King James. It's like, which version of the King James? They had version in the 1700s and the 1800s, because people back then, you could, if you don't believe me, please go on Google and Google an image of the original 1611 King James of any page, enlarge it so you could see it, and try to read it, even read it. And you'll find you can't read it because the spelling was different. The letters, W's were V's with W, forget about it. So people think that they wrote, but who cares what these fellows from Cambridge did in the 17th century? It was revised over and over again. Many of them couldn't read Hebrew. Many of them could. They had to, but why did they have to rely on the Tyndale Bible, which earlier in the Bishop's Bible that predates it? It's certainly the King James Bible is written beautifully. There's some great, use of the English language. It preserved in the King James, but the King James is a translation. But worse than that is it's a mistranslation, because the King James Bible altered words, followed mistranslations that were initiated 1,000 years earlier, more than that, by Jerome in the Vulgate. So it really is a theological crime scene. The person should stay away from the King James Bible as far as possible, because it will mislead you, will misguide you. But even if someone, let's say, isn't trying to be corrupt, let's take the best, let's say a Jewish translation, Art Scroll. Art Scroll is a great job, but how could Art Scroll's translation be better than the original? So the idea is completely preposterous. You will never hear a Jew say such a thing. This is only Christian. Why do Christians try to advance such ideas? Because none of them read the original. They all rely on the translations. And not only that, their translations are mistranslations. So they advance. I know I'm not saying Christians are a bunch of monsters. It may sound that way. This is how their pastors taught them and how they learned. They advance the need for King James Bibles and New International Versions. Why? The reason is their theology is unsustainable by the original Hebrew. Do you get it? It means the original Hebrew tells you that Christianity's ideas are alien to the God of Israel. So these so-called translations are there to mask over the original message and to present messages Christologically, to put capital letters in where they don't belong, to change the words. Okay? So I think that that answers that. We'll just deal with that there.
Okay, and then, now in Josephus.
The question is too broad. Josephus is extremely important to us because Josephus, oh gosh, I mean, like we know everything you know about Masada as an example is Josephus or all the archaeology. So Josephus is an extremely important historian. He's not the Word of God. He was widely considered to be a traitor by many because I can't go into the background of Josephus. So, but it's too complicated and it's not germane to the show. But Josephus is an extremely important Jewish historian that wrote for the Romans. He was employed by Rome to write history. So so what he wrote, you have to remember, was written through a filter, because it's like if you were working for North Korea and you lived in North Korea, you'd have to be pretty careful about what you wrote, right? If you lived, let's not take North Korea, we'll take Russia, maybe as a good example. Well, as it turns out, Putin's opponent was just assassinated on the streets of Russia, or wherever he was. I don't know what happened. So you want to kind of be careful. So therefore, Josephus is very valuable to us, but it's not biblical. And you have to keep in mind that Josephus is employed by the Roman Empire at the highest level possible. And therefore, everything he said has to be read, has to be understood that, you have to take it in that vein. One other point about Josephus that is germane to this type of show, and that is that the church tampered with Josephus in that they inserted into Josephus passages that sound like Josephus was talking about Jesus. The most famous is TF, which is Antiquities, as I mentioned earlier, Antiquities of the Jews. Is a book written in 93/94, and book number 1833, we have the church inserted a passage about Jesus. Now, how do we know that? So this is just one little point about Josephus. Okay, the earliest book of Josephus that we have is the 11th century, and it's from the church. So it's not like you could have gone in the 5th century to Amazon and gotten a copy of Josephus published by Simon and Schuster. Okay, the church it was their baby. Okay, now how do I know that Josephus was tampered with? How do we know? How can I know? And I can tell you when Testimonium Flavium that's what this passage is called in Antiquities 1833. How do I know it was inserted? And how do I know? And I can tell you it was inserted in the beginning of the 4th century and around the year 324. Well, how do I know that? Here I am in the year 2015 in Indonesia, and I'm telling you what happened, so I'll tell you how I know. And that is that all the church fathers who were familiar with Josephus, who knew it very well and quoted it extensively, and this is a very important caveat, and many of them quoted Josephus as a defense of their Christian beliefs, would have cherished, they would have loved a reading that we find in what's called TF. And you can Google this thing. But and you had church fathers who knew Josephus backwards and forwards. You had Origen as an example, who was in the 3rd century, a genius. Man probably wrote at least 1,000, if not 2,000 books in his life. He was a genius. He calls antiquities up and down, and he does that in defense of the Christian religion. He's actually defending Christianity from to a pagan. But the point is, or you have Justin, who's a very early church father. These are what's called ante-Nicene church fathers. And none of them quote this passage. And the first time we find this Jesus passage is when we get to the time of Eusebius, who was the historian of the church. So either it was Eusebius or someone exactly at the time that invents a passage about Jesus and places it in antiquities. There's another passage that relates to James, but the only thing that was interpolated was who was the brother who was supposedly the Christ. If you take that out, you don't have a Christian text. I think the text about John the Baptist is original to Josephus. To give you, but let's get to the real big text. The text that's really important with the Christian point in mind is the following. People have said that there are 14 church fathers that quoted Josephus prior to 324. I could not find 14. I found 12. Okay, so I'm going to go with the number 12, which is more conservative.
Okay.
12 church fathers quote prior to the Council of Nicaea, prior to Eusebius, means prior to the 4th century, are quoting Josephus up and down, and nowhere does TF appear. None of them. It's not there. If it was there, they would have quoted it. And how do you know? You can't prove from silence. The Christians argue, no, you can. In this case, because Christians were pointing to Josephus to defend other Christian ideas, that just showing that the New Testament was consistent with the history found in Josephus. So that is just a false statement. So therefore, Josephus, as we have it now, has in it a number of interpolations. That means that later Christian scribes inserted texts about Jesus, and Josephus was not a Christian, and in fact, Origen says this openly in Origen's commentary on Matthew chapter 10. Origen openly says that Josephus was not a Christian. Well, think about this for a moment. If Origen says, listen very carefully, if the church father Origen said in the 3rd century that Josephus was not a Christian, and you can look it up, it's in his commentary on Matthew chapter 10, very famous. You can look, I'm sure you can Google this, okay? Well, why would he say that if there was a text in Josephus that says that Jesus did miracles and wonders, and if he was a man, if you can even call him a man? So you see, obviously, that Origen was convinced that Josephus had nothing to do with Christianity. So the answer is that Josephus, of course, is important to us on many levels. He was writing under Roman influence. That's a filter. I'm not going to get into his personality, but he's extremely important to us as an ancient historian from the ancient world whose works were preserved. But the Christian part of it are nefarious. They are later insertions, interpolations into Josephus.
Well, folks, there you have it, straight from the rabbi's mouth. With Rabbi, thank you so much for joining us and for giving us all your insight. We really appreciate it. And feel free to every week. Why is my button not working now? There you go. Rabbi, I got 3 mouse thingies here I got to deal with. This is crazy. Hey, there we go. I think I found it now. So, so anyway, thank you for tuning in this week. Next week, join us again, 11 a.m. Central, 12 noon New York time. And apparently we're at 11 p.m. your time, right? Because we're 12 hours now, Rabbi?
No, we're Houston to Jakarta is 12 hours, right?
12 hours. So
Now.
okay, gotcha. So
Now.
right now it's
And-
1:15 in the morning where you're at. Is that correct?
Right now it's 1:21 in the morning or something like that. Maybe I don't know. My watch could be off, but yeah, something like that.
Gotcha.
It's really dark. It's just to prove to you, for those of you who are not sure the world is round. Okay, so if you're not sure, I could show you. It's dark outside. So I promise you, the world is round.
Yeah, it is. It is.
And Copernicus or whatever his name is was correct. And whatever. So.
Wow. Rabbi, it's been fun. Jews for Judaism.
Outreach Judaism.
Outreach Judaism. You know, I did the same thing on Rabbi Michael Skovac's. I advertised you on his. That is so.
Well, we're all on the same team here. There's a new website, toviasinger.tv. Toviasinger.tv. You can watch my videos of all sorts of shows there.
That's great. I am going to go there and save that as soon as we stop this broadcast. Well, everybody, shalom, shalom. I hope you had a great week, and we'll see you next week. Have a wonderful, wonderful week ahead.
הרצון שלי לחבור כאן עולם מלא צבעים יהיה בודה ישיב אליי את החיים